Get out of my house before I call the police on you. My own mother said those words to me while my stepfather changed the locks behind her, on the house I had helped pay for since I was 16 years old. But what made me smile as I walked away with nothing but a duffel bag wasn't insanity, it was the secret sitting in my safety deposit box, the deed showing I had purchased their mortgage 3 months earlier. How do you evict someone who already owns everything you have? My name is Derek Holloway, and 5 years ago, I stood on the cracked sidewalk of my childhood home in suburban Cleveland, watching my family seal the door against me like I was some kind of criminal. The woman who gave birth to me, the man she chose over her own blood, and my stepsister who had orchestrated the entire thing, they stood in the doorway of that 2-story colonial like a portrait of self-righteous cruelty. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I ended up owning the mortgage on the house I was thrown out of, you need to understand how deeply this betrayal cut, and how patiently I planned my response. The betrayal and the burning question. Let me take you back to that day. March 15th. I remember because the irony wasn't lost on me, the Ides of March, the day of famous betrayal. Ohio spring was just starting to thaw the winter gray, and I had come home from my job at a logistics company expecting a normal evening. Instead, I found my belongings in garbage bags on the front lawn. My mother, Patricia, stood on the porch with her arms crossed. My stepfather, Ronald, was already removing my key from his keychain. And my stepsister, Megan, 2 years younger than me but somehow always the favorite, watched from the window with a smirk that told me everything I needed to know about who was behind this. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to stay calm. "Don't play innocent, Derek. We know what you did." "What I did? What are you talking about?" Ronald stepped forward, puffing out his chest like he'd been waiting years for this moment. "Megan told us everything. The money you've been stealing from the household account. The lies you've been telling about this family to your coworkers. We've had enough." I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Stealing? I had been contributing $500 a month to that household account since I was 19, money that was supposed to go toward utilities and groceries but somehow never seemed to stretch as far as it should. That's insane. I've never stolen anything. I've been paying into this house for 7 years. My mother's face hardened. "Megan showed us the bank statements, Derek. We saw the withdrawals. We're not stupid." I looked past her to Megan, who had come to the doorway now. She wouldn't meet my eyes, but that smirk never left her face. In that moment, I understood. She had doctored something, statements, screenshots, whatever it took. And my mother, who had always favored her husband's biological daughter over her own son, had chosen to believe her without question. "You're believing her over me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, I'm your son. I've lived here my entire life. I've paid thousands into this house." "The house is in Ronald's name," she said coldly. "You have no claim here. And after what you've done, you're no longer welcome. Take your things and go." "You have 30 minutes, Ronald added, checking his watch like I was an appointment he needed to finish. "After that, I'm calling the cops." I stood there for a moment, frozen between rage and disbelief. 27 years old, and I was being thrown away like garbage based on lies from someone who had resented me since the day her father married my mother. I could have fought. I could have screamed. I could have begged. Instead, I picked up my garbage bags and walked away. But not because I was defeated. Because in that moment, standing on that cracked sidewalk with everything I owned in trash bags, something shifted inside me. The part of me that had spent my whole life trying to earn my mother's love, trying to be good enough, trying to keep the peace, that part finally died. And something colder, smarter, more patient took its place. As I loaded my bags into my beat-up Honda, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to react. I wasn't going to beg or explain or try to prove my innocence. I was going to wait. And when the time was right, I was going to take everything. The silent acquisition. The first few months were brutal. I crashed on my buddy Victor's couch, worked double shifts, and tried to piece my life back together. But I never stopped watching. Never stopped listening. Through an old high school friend who still lived in the neighborhood, I kept tabs on my former family. What I learned made my blood boil, but it also gave me the opportunity one needed. Ronald's business was failing. The construction company he'd been so proud of was hemorrhaging money. And he'd been quietly taking out loans against the house to keep it afloat. The house that was supposed to be my mother's security. The house I had helped maintain with my monthly payments for nearly a decade. By October, I learned through the neighborhood grapevine that they were 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank was getting impatient. Foreclosure was becoming a real possibility. That's when the idea hit me. I had been saving aggressively since moving out, partly out of necessity, partly out of spite. I had also received a small settlement from a car accident the previous year that IED never touched. Combined with my savings, I had about $40,000. Not enough to buy a house. But potentially enough to buy a distressed mortgage. I did my research. I learned that when homeowners default, banks sometimes sell the debt to third-party investors at a discount. They'd rather recoup something than go through the expensive foreclosure process. And if I could position myself as that investor, I contacted a real estate attorney named Gloria Vance, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had handled my accident settlement. When I explained what I wanted to do, she was quiet for a long moment. "You want to buy your own family's mortgage," she said slowly. "The family that threw you out." "Yes. And they won't know it's you? That's the point." She let out a low whistle. "I've seen a lot of things in this business, Derek. But this is a first." She paused. "I'm in. Let's make it happen." The process took 4 months. Gloria set up an LLC with a generic name, Midwest Property Holdings, that couldn't be traced back to me. We negotiated with the bank, who was more than happy to offload a problem mortgage for 60 cents on the dollar. With my savings and a small loan from Victor, who I promised to repay double, I scraped together enough to make the purchase. On February 3rd, I became the legal owner of my family's mortgage. They had no idea. As far as they knew, the bank had simply sold their loan to some faceless investment company. The payment address changed, the letterhead was different, but the amount stayed the same. And they kept paying. Every month, like clockwork, a check arrived at my LLC's P.O. box. I would hold it in my hands, reading my stepfather's cramped signature on the memo line, "Mortgage payment." He was paying me. The son they had thrown away was now their landlord. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. The unknowing tenants. For 18 months, I watched from the shadows. And let me tell you, those 18 months were filled with moments so ironic, so perfectly poetic, that I had to bite my tongue bloody to keep from laughing. There was the Thanksgiving dinner I heard about from my neighborhood source. Apparently, Ronald had stood at the head of the table and given a speech about finally getting the house back on track and building something to leave for the family. My mother had cried happy tears. Megan had posted about it on Instagram with the caption, "Grateful for my hardworking parents and our beautiful home, our home." I screenshot that post and saved it. I still have it. There was the time Ronald bragged at a neighborhood barbecue about negotiating a great deal with the new mortgage company. "These corporate investors don't know anything about regular people," he'd said. "According to my source, I got them to lower our monthly payment by $200 just by threatening to walk away." He hadn't negotiated anything. I had instructed Gloria to accept his request because I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him complacent. I wanted him to feel like he was winning right up until the moment he realized he had already lost. Then there was the close call. About a year into my ownership, my mother ran into Victor at a grocery store. They chatted briefly. She had always liked him, and she asked how I was doing. "Derek's doing great," Victor said, keeping his voice casual. "Really turned things around. He's gotten into real estate investing, actually. Doing really well." I hadn't told Victor to say that. When he called me afterward, panicked that he'd revealed too much, I actually laughed. "It's fine," I told him. "She won't connect the dots. She doesn't think I'm capable of anything." And I was right. According to my source, my mother mentioned the conversation to Ronald that night, and his response was, "Real estate? Derek? Please. He probably means he's renting a slightly nicer apartment." They couldn't conceive of me as anything other than the failure they had decided I was. And that blindness was my greatest weapon. The hardest part wasn't keeping the secret. It was waiting for the right moment to reveal it. Every time I heard about Megan's new car or Ronald's fishing trips, or my mother's kitchen renovation, all funded by a mortgage they didn't realize they were paying to me, I wanted to drive over there and watch their faces crumble. But I waited. Because I knew the perfect moment would come. And when it did, I wanted it to be devastating. The revelation and reclamation. The moment came on a Sunday afternoon in August, 2 years after I had purchased the mortgage. My grandmother, my mother's mother, was celebrating her 80th birthday. Despite everything, Grandma Ruth had stayed in contact with me. She was the only family member who had questioned my eviction, the only one who sent me birthday cards and checked in with occasional phone calls. When she invited me to her party, I knew this was it. "Are you sure?" she asked when I accepted. "Your mother will be there. Ronald. Megan." "I know, Grandma. It's time." The party was at a rental hall in Lakewood. When I walked in, the room went silent. My mother's face cycled through shock, anger, and something that might have been guilt before settling on cold indifference. Ronald puffed up like he was ready for a confrontation. Megan suddenly found her phone very interesting. But Grandma Ruth rushed over and hugged me tight. "I'm so glad you came, sweetheart." I spent the first hour mingling with distant relatives, accepting their awkward condolences about my situation, deflecting questions about what had happened. My mother avoided me entirely. Ronald glared from across the room. Megan whispered to anyone who would listen, probably spreading more lies. Then came the toast. Grandma Ruth stood up and thanked everyone for coming. She talked about family, about love, about forgiveness. And then she said something that made my heart clench. I hope someday, this family can heal. I hope we can remember that blood is thicker than pride. She was looking directly at my mother when she said it. I hadn't planned to do this during the party. I had imagined a more private confrontation, maybe showing up at the house with my documentation, watching their faces fall in the privacy of their own living room. But something about Grandma's words, something about the way my mother rolled her eyes at her own mother's plea for reconciliation, something snapped. I stood up. I'd like to say something, if that's okay. The room quieted. My mother's face tightened. Ronald started to rise, but Grandma waved him down. Go ahead, Derek. I took a breath. 2 years ago, I was thrown out of my home based on lies. I wasn't given a chance to defend myself. I wasn't shown any evidence. I was just discarded. Derek, this isn't the place, my mother started. I'm almost done, I said calmly. I want everyone here to know that I never stole anything. I contributed to that household for almost a decade. And when I was thrown out, I lost everything, except my determination to rebuild. I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket. Which is why I find it so interesting that for the past 18 months, Ronald and Patricia have been making their mortgage payments to my company, Midwest Property Holdings, which I own. The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's face went white. Ronald's mouth fell open. Megan dropped her phone. You're lying, Ronald finally sputtered. That's impossible. I handed the envelope to my grandmother. Those are the ownership documents, Grandma. I bought their mortgage when they defaulted 2 years ago. Every payment they've made since then has come to me. Grandma Ruth opened the envelope, looked at the papers, and then looked at my mother with an expression I had never seen before, disappointment so profound it was almost physical. Patricia, she said quietly. What did you do to this boy? My mother couldn't speak. For the first time in my life, I saw her completely without words. Ronald found his voice first. You can't do this. This is fraud. I'll sue you. You'll do nothing, I cut him off. Everything was done legally, through proper channels, with licensed attorneys. You defaulted on your mortgage. I purchased it. That's how capitalism works, Ronald. I thought you of all people would appreciate that. I turned to Megan, who looked like she was about to cry. All those lies you told about me? The fake evidence? You got me thrown out of my own home. And in return, you've spent 18 months paying my bills. I let that sink in. How does it feel? She didn't answer. She couldn't. I looked at my mother one last time. I spent my whole life trying to earn your love, Mom. Trying to be good enough. I finally realized that was never going to happen. So I stopped trying. And I started building something of my own. I turned and walked toward the door. What happens now? My mother called after me, her voice cracking. To the house? I paused at the threshold. That depends entirely on you. The mortgage is callable at any time now. I could demand full payment tomorrow if I wanted. You'd have 30 days to come up with the balance or face foreclosure. I let that hang in the air. But I'm not cruel. Not like you were to me. So here's what's going to happen, I'm going to give you a choice. You can continue making payments to me, at a slightly higher interest rate, and keep the house. Or you can sell, pay off the mortgage, and walk away with whatever equity is left. I looked directly at my mother. But if I ever hear another lie about me from anyone in this family, if Megan ever tries to slander me again, if any of you ever contacts me with anything other than a sincere apology, I will foreclose. And I will enjoy it. I walked out into the August sunshine, leaving chaos behind me. Beyond the eviction, a new beginning. That was 3 years ago. My mother and Ronald chose to sell. They couldn't stomach the idea of paying me every month, knowing I held their fate in my hands. The house sold for just under $300,000. After paying off the mortgage, they walked away with about $60,000 in equity. They moved to a smaller townhouse across town. I hear Ronald's business finally went under about a year later. Megan got married and moved to Indiana. My mother and I haven't spoken since that birthday party. Grandma Ruth passed away last spring. In her will, she left me her engagement ring and a note that said, "You deserved better. I'm proud of the man you became." I cried for 3 days. Today, I own 4 rental properties in the Cleveland area. Victor is my business partner. I paid him back triple what he loaned me, and now we invest together. I'm engaged to a wonderful woman named Simone who knows the whole story and loves me anyway. Some people ask if I regret what I did. If the revenge was worth losing my family. But that's the truth. I didn't lose my family that day on the sidewalk with the garbage bags. I lost them years before, in 1,000 small moments of favoritism and dismissal and conditional love that was never really love at all. What I gained was something more valuable, the knowledge that I could take the worst thing that ever happened to me and transform it into power. The understanding that I didn't need their approval to build something meaningful. The betrayal didn't break me. It built me. If you've experienced family betrayal, if you've been cast aside by people who were supposed to protect you, if you're wondering whether you'll ever recover, I want you to know something. You will. Not by begging for their acceptance. Not by trying to prove your worth to people who already decided you're worthless. But by building something of your own, something they can't take away, something that proves your value without needing their validation. The best revenge isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's the quiet accumulation of power until the day you choose to reveal it. They threw me away like garbage. I came back owning everything they had. That's not revenge. That's justice. Have you ever experienced betrayal from family? Have you found a way to reclaim your power? Share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because this is just the beginning.